Hello, this is Steve Stierwalt, and we've had some significant developments in the funding situation that I wanted to get the news out as soon as I can to let people know about. As many of you, I'm sure, are aware, that right after the holiday weekend, the AIS-WCD board met and we had received proposals on how to deal with the situation, the funding situation. At the time, our information from Department of Ag was that we needed to come up with a proposal on how the funding should be distributed. As you may recall, we've had a tentative agreement, shall we say, when we met with Gombe the first time, that the $5 million that was appropriated for districts, out of that $5 million, $2.2 million has been agreed to and still is, that 2.2 would be divided evenly amongst the 97 districts. The last time we met with Gombe, there was still up in the air, shall we say, to be determined, however you want to say it, what the situation was going to be with the remaining $2.8 million. We had received information through the Department of Ag that Gombe would like to see a proposal that would not go to all 97 districts as far as operations and money for programs. I guess I should clarify that money for operations would not go to all districts. Program dollars, had been no communication on how that would be distributed. So we received 7 different proposals from all across the state on ideas on how to do that, to respond to what we heard from the Department of Ag as far as how to distribute that $2.8 million. So in our board meeting on September 6th, after lengthy discussion on the relative merits of the different proposals, we kind of circled back around to saying, because of our strategic plan that we're planning on that we will do in January, and a lot of other reasons, still the number one priority for the state association was to get the full $5 million out to districts as operations. The information that we'd received was that IDOA and Gombe was wanting a proposal that did not include all 97 districts. But there was a lot of discussion in that meeting on the 6th as to what was the intent of the legislation, of the legislators, I should say, as they passed that budget that included $5 million towards operations. And so we, in that September 6th board meeting, decided on a two-prong, I guess you would say, attack on this situation. The first priority was to talk to our legislators and see if their intent was for that full $5 million to come out as operations to districts. And so I want to thank many of you who have done that, talked to your legislators, and have responded back with what results that you had heard. And so that was the number one priority. And then we did settle on, and the board voted unanimously, to have a second proposal that in case the legislative effort was not successful, and that became what is known as Idea 3, and we'll talk about that more later. So to recap, we came out of the meeting on September 6th with 2 proposals. Number one priority was the legislative proposal, work with legislators, ask them to convince Gombe to release all that money as operations. Failing that, we have a backup plan called Idea 3. As I had expressed coming out of our meeting on September 6th, we had asked our directors and staff to try to make contacts with their elected representatives all across the state to try to forward the idea of all the money coming out, all the $5 million coming out as operations. And I think because of the great response that we had from across the state, people talking to their legislators, it seems that the level of concern of how things were happening in Springfield with Gombe, the legislators became concerned about that. And thanks to Myron Kirby, he set up a meeting with Representative Mitchell that was to happen yesterday, which was September 13th. When Myron and I and Kelly got to that meeting on September 13th, I was quite surprised to find out that it was not just a meeting with Representative Mitchell. As you can see from the list here, Representative Mitchell's, Rice, Hammond were all there. Landon Steger was Senator Rose, legislative assistants, Laura Sinclair from IDOA, Jim Kychek representing the governor's office, Mike Hoffman. There were a lot more people at this meeting than I was expecting, and it turned into a lot different meeting. Some of our best supporters in the legislature were there at this meeting, as I just pointed out, and they were concerned about the funding situation for districts, and they had heard our call about what was their intent. What was the intent of the legislature when they passed this budget? And so that we discussed that for a full hour. Was it the intent of the legislature and the legislators who were in this meeting with us were very adamant to Gombe that they would like to see this money all go to operations. And we chased that rabbit around for a full hour talking about why we thought it was important with our strategic plan coming up, that it was not a good idea to try to start a new funding scheme when we were going to do our strategic plan, and it's hard to say whether a new funding scheme would fit into that, and the problems that are associated with something like this, and how important it was to keep our trained staff and our technical people, trained staff, our best assets in place as we do the strategic plan. And we chased that, as I say, for a full hour. And after the hour, and Gombe was very adamant also that that some of this program, this money from this $2.8 million needed to go to program, and was not backing off of that stance at all. So after an hour, our legislators, who I want to really commend, are some of our best supporters, were starting to try to think of other alternatives, shall we say, on how to solve the problem, because they weren't able to make the headway that they wanted to with the governor's office. So at that point, I thought it was appropriate to go to our backup plan, which was Idea 3, which talks about having $2 million out of this $2.8 million that would go for operations, and $800,000 of the 2.8 that would go for programs. That proposal met with, shall we say, qualified approval. It didn't go as far as the governor's office was wanting to go. They had a lot more money that they wanted to see more money than that going into programming, and not as much going to operations, but indicated that this was something that they could consider. And if you look back to when the budget was written and passed, and the language that was put in the budget saying that $2.8 million would all go for programs, for them to consider this $2 million of the 2.8 going for operations and 800,000 going for programming, to me, the people from Gombe have come a long way, and I appreciated their flexibility in that. And so we have this proposal was passed by the association board, and I think it looks like will be considered. And so the next step actually is to have the Department of Ag to look at it. And so it's a tentative agreement at this point, and the Department of Ag is then going to have to look at it. So what happens now? My understanding is that Gombe, the governor's office, will share our idea with the Department of Ag. Assuming we get a positive response, or at least a proposal back from the Department of Ag that is something that we feel like that we can work with. I've expressed to the department, to the players involved here, that in my opinion, as the state association president, I am limited on any kind of, shall we say, deals that I can make with anybody else. Our board has given me direction on that this idea 3 is something that we can consider, and as long as what comes out of the Department of Ag fits into that, shall we say, broad outline, I think it's something that we can move forward with. So assuming we get a positive response from the Department of Ag, the next step for me, I would suggest, is that to appoint a technical committee to help figure out the details. We all know in any proposal, especially something like this that is completely new to all of us, the devil's in the details. And I don't pretend to have those all figured out at this point. My thought is, let's work with IDOA and find out where they are. If we can check that box and say we're on a path that we can work with, then we'll work on developing the details with a technical committee. Then the technical committee will give a proposal then to the State Association Board to consider. And if the State Association Board is okay with the technical part of this plan, then it's something I hope that we can work with then. The one thing we did learn that I had never heard before in our other meetings with Gombe was that this stopgap budget money has to be distributed, has to be out the door from the governor's office by the end of December. So obviously we want it as soon as possible, but as long as we get our ducks in a row with these funding proposals, that it sounds like that no one has made any representation on when they think they could get this done. But at least if we do have an agreement that both sides can move forward with, we know that there is at least a deadline on the money. So it may not come as soon as we want. It may come real soon. I have no indication at this time of any kind of a plan that any kind of a timetable when the money might be available. But at least there is a deadline. We all know this has been a difficult road funding, the uncertainty that comes with no plan for funding is unimaginable if as an employee and people who depend on this. And my heart goes out to everyone who is tied in knots over this funding situation. And I apologize for not getting it done as quick as we can, but we are working on that. And I do want to again thank all the people from across the state who have contacted their legislators and have kept soil and water conservation districts top of mind with them. Gombe received a lot of calls, and they were there yesterday where I don't think they really want to keep coming there. And so the calls and the I don't know if the right word is pressure that came from across the state has helped us to at least get this far. So I do want to thank everyone who made calls and then reported those calls. And even more importantly, in all these uncertain times with no funding at all last year, the work that our district staff and directors have done to keep getting conservation on the ground, I think it should be an inspiration to the state. So thank you very much.